So, yeah, this is just a quick agenda. I mean, we all know what we're talking about, but today's going to be a discussion about 1401 Assembly Street. And we just thought we would start with just a quick little run through of some of the designs we've seen over the last few years, because this has been through, several DDRC processes and has been approved a couple of times. So we thought that might be helpful if we need to refer back to some previous designs that had gone through the commission. And then at the beginning, we'll have if we have any public comments. I know we've got one letter to read, and then you guys can just get started on a more informal discussion. So going back to, I guess, September of 2015, this project came to the DDRC for an informational presentation. So this was not asking for a DDRC decision, but it was trying to get some initial feedback from the commission. And we did have some comments about it, but the team decided to go a different direction and came back in the spring of 2016 with a different approach. And that was also informational to try to get feedback from the DDRC about a different kind of design aesthetic. And that was approved in August of 2016. So this was the approved design, 4.5 years ago. And then in January of this year, the project had come back with some changes and was deferred based on some concerns that were raised in the evaluation and by the DDRC. And a subcommittee work session was set up at that time. And then in March, the project was approved. One of the big concerns at the January meeting was the location of the trash removal on Assembly Street. So the floor plan rearrangement was critical to that approval. So that was in March of this year. The project was approved. And then in September, the team came back to staff with some significant changes to the design. And staff had a discussion and raised some concerns about many of the changes that were made. And then some of those were addressed, and the project came to the DDRC in November of this year. So that's kind of where we are now. The subcommittee was set up in November. And so we're here today to talk about some of the concerns that are still present in this current version.
Great.
And then I'm going to, unless anybody wants to go back and discuss anything at this point, I'll stop screen sharing and then read the letter that came in.
Okay, I mean, somebody's going to put up what our revised drawing. Andy, are you doing that? How's that working here?
LJC is going to do it. I was going to kind of preface it.
All right. Well, let Lucinda finish, and then we'll go that route.
Okay, let me get this letter up. So this is an email that came through yesterday. This is from Matt Kennel, who's the president and CEO of the City Center Partnership. It says, Dear DDRC Subcommittee, a note to once again affirm the City Center Partnership support for the housing development by Clayco at 1401 Assembly Street. We're hopeful that the DDRC can work with this quality developer on a final design that is able to move forward towards construction. This new development fits well in an urban setting that bridges both the Main Street and Vista districts and brings smart density to a long vacant parcel. The new residents at 1401 will bring much needed customers to businesses in the area that need such a boost, perhaps more than ever. Thanks for your willingness to work with Clayco on what I'm sure will be a stellar new building for the heart of our city. Sincerely, Matt Kennel. And great. I don't think we've gotten any other correspondence, so.
Okay. I'd like to piggyback on Matt's email too, to say that, and to address, perhaps to address a comment that was made during the hearing, actually by a member of the commission, which is that you guys, I'm sure, appreciate that we are very supportive of what you're doing and excited about it. I know I've actually been on the commission since the first scheme was presented for informational purposes, and I think Andrew, you and I, who have oddly similar names, have gone back quite a quite a ways on the project. So I want to set tone and, clearly, and for those who also might be watching, that the DDRC is very supportive of this project. I'm personally very excited about it. I know I've said that myself, and I know that other commissioners have said the same in the past with the past two schemes that were approved. And I know we went through work sessions with those, and it was successful each time. So, I have all faith that we'll get there this time again. And I think it's all along over the course of 5 years, it has been a pretty cooperative process. So I'd just like to offer that spirit as we start our discussion.
And I think we appreciate that. There's recognition on our part too, that you guys have been good to work. Honestly, the community's been good to work with. The library's been good to work with, and it's a large project, and there are challenges that are different today than they were when we started. But all along there have been some challenges. So we're trying our best because we really think it's a good market, a good location, good city to do development in. So, with that in mind, why don't we roll into sort of our response to the commentary that we got, I don't know, what was it, 2 weeks ago or something like that.
Great.
Right. And so I'll just say, what we came away with from the November 12th DDRC presentation was, we heard your concern about really two main issues, and that was kind of the openness along the assembly facade, both at the street level and above, and then also the prominence of the glass corner element at Assembly in Washington. So those are the areas where we focused. And, we think that we've made a few changes that have definitely been improvements to the design. So I'm excited to hear what you guys think about this. And with that, I'll turn it over to Drew or Bob, whoever's controlling this.
Okay. And can everyone see the elevation? I just want to be sure my computer tells me you can.
We can.
Yeah, I can.
You can see it?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. All right. Well, we really appreciate all the feedback. Just to reiterate what Andrew and Jay had already mentioned, and I know it's listened. I it's actually 2015 is a long time ago. I had actually forgot about that initial design concept that we had submitted, and you just took me back quite a ways.
Yeah, it was quite a different approach.
Yeah, I remember that, and I liked it. I remember I was a new commission member. I liked that scheme quite a bit. But I had forgotten about that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also commend you on your ability to organize and be able to retrieve information over time. That's a real skill. So I'm just sort of skipping the preamble. We sort of put together the full deck, so I can certainly cycle back and go to the plans or anything that you'd like to see. But again, just given the history, I think we're all probably pretty familiar. And I'll just start with the elevations and say that the plans remain unchanged from what you saw previously and what you've seen over the last couple of years. So what I have up is obviously the Washington Street elevation, and I think primarily this has remained unchanged. What we're showing to, and there was a comment last time, and just the door to the trash room wasn't represented graphically on the elevation. So I just wanted to start there and just go ahead and confirm that was just an oversight in the graphics. And I think that the real emphasis in what we came away from the last meeting with was really the concern as we took it along Assembly Street, where in terms of the density of the glazing and just sort of the silhouette, we wanted to go back to that and just sort of rethink that. So with that said, we started doing a side by side. We looked at where we were. We didn't go back as far as Lucinda did, but we started looking at the southeast corner. So we reintroduced sort of the percentage of glazing there. So we started to introduce that hierarchy. So we're really favoring and drawing attention more to the intersection, but then also just the entry of the building, which I think there was a lot of synergy there. And so we really appreciated that comment and just going back to it. The other thing we did was we looked at the street front. So before we were bringing the columns all the way down to grade, but just to help enliven and bring more energy to the assembly street, the assembly street, literally the street. We just brought more glazing and we held that pier up. We're still maintaining the awnings going across. And the other thing we started to address, and we tried to do it just borrowing the same form language. So as you know from the plans, we have the elevator, the vertical circulation. So there's an elevator shaft here. And so in the previous scheme, we were just starting to work with the finished materials, but it was all opaque. There wasn't any glazing there. So what we did was, and I hope this reads on the computer screen okay, or on the WebEx, but we introduced 2 columns of glass that just sort of back up to the elevator core. I'll just be completely frank about it, because that is going against the elevator, and it'll be spandrel glass on levels 6 and above. So we distinguish that color. That's more of a light purple shade here. But in terms of the rhythm, and then just keeping the the articulation on the horizontals, we're maintaining that all the way across. And then we just sort of broke down just that middle bay, which is the slight there. I will just continue through the north elevation.
Hey, Bob. Bob.
Yep.
On the ground floor, those windows are significantly bigger than they were in the original presentation. There was a little transition going on internally where we looked at that. Did you mention that?
I did not. So yeah, in terms of the overall base, we've increased the glazing by a little over 10% just in the podium, and then in terms of the residential floors from level 6 and up, we're at 40% in terms of the glazing.
Let me just clarify this for the group. So when we submitted our plan that was discussed at that Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, these ground floor windows were the same size as the windows, up above. Mm-hmm. We added the middle glass and made that opening bigger in 2 of those bays. And then we also brought that spandrel glass all the way down so that the tower expresses more as glass. So that's the difference. I just wanted you to know that, because I know that was one of the comments, that the base of the building had less glass on it. And now we've opened that up quite a bit. So I just want to make sure everybody knew it. We had actually looked at that internally, but because of the way the presentation works, we couldn't get it to you in time. So anyway.
So you've also,
right. And
thanks for pulling this up. It looks like you've increased, I think that's, Bob, you said that in the beginning of your presentation, you've increased the glazing at the south east corner as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, we added, how many, did we add 1 row of glass or 2? I forgot.
Actually, we added 2 rows, so the glass now extends to the north, so it encompasses the first column, and then the punched window essentially now is absorbed into the glazing. And I'll just I'll switch back.
I think that makes a big difference. It was one of the things that was consistent with the previous schemes that had been approved, was the from a compositional or formal standpoint, making that the primary corner, which the previous scheme that you presented a couple of weeks ago, I thought there was really some ambiguity between what's happening on the north and south side of that Assembly Street facade, but I think you've reordered it back more similarly to how it had been in the past. So to me, that seems like the right move. I have one sort of the the architect in me kind of question is I think it's great that you have opened up at the base and stopped the pilaster short, except that I'm wondering if maybe you have it as a detail. This is something that spans across, you know, the brick, a couple of soldiers or something that spans across that that receives that piece of pilaster. Yeah, it looks like it's about to guillotine you when you know, it's just a, you know what I mean?
I absolutely, I sure do, and that's a detail that yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, that we want to have some finality at the base of that, at the bottom of that pier as it comes down.
Right. But I mean, I'll let other commissioners. Well, I'll let you. Why don't you go ahead and finish? I didn't mean to interrupt. Sure.
I'll just go. There aren't many more changes, so I'll just go through quickly just to confirm that for you, and then we're glad to go back and get the feedback and answer questions or discuss further. So again, the north, no change. This is what you saw a couple weeks back. Similarly on the west.
Hey, Bob.
And then
Haven't we, before, go back to that one slide, haven't we decided to get rid of upper landscaping? I think everybody raised some concerns about this upper landscaping, you know, keeping it alive in simple terms. And I thought we decided to eliminate that.
I guess that's something that we can discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I know it came up at the meeting. I think it came up in Lucinda's comments.
Sure.
It came up internally too. Like ground level landscaping, I don't have a problem with. I'm just a little nervous about maintaining what I'm going to call the second floor, those boxes. I think that
right.
We all,
you're talking about this area here.
Yeah, we all run the risk that
Over on the bustle.
Gets hard to keep alive. Anyway, all right, so keep going.
Okay. Okay, and then what I wanted to just point out in these next couple of slides, I know there was a comment about the stucco, where it transitioned to the white in the leg of the two short legs of the C. So we just added pigment to that stucco so that it'll represent the front face or the south face of those two wings of the residential floors. And then you'll see that again here on the that west elevation. Get the right scale. Yeah. So then we just brought the model into the 3D view so you can start to see where there's more, you know, a much greater hierarchy here on the southwest corner. So you see the rhythm going back on assembly. More of a street scale detail.
Yeah, you know, I actually thought that the way that you're showing the entrance now actually resolves itself better as an entrance at the corner than it had when you were coming straight into the corner of the building. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah,
I think, yeah, appreciate that. There's a more transition. I think there's a little change in scale to bring you in. I think it was improving. And then just from the north, and then from the west along Washington, and then just stepping back in terms of, and start to pick up on the coloration and just the change in pigment of the stucco, and then the overall. And yeah, so that really represents our current thinking. And we're glad to get your feedback and have more conversation. Answer any questions.
Can you give me more information, please?
I'm sorry, Bob. Could you repeat that, please?
Can you show me the north elevation?
Sure. course.
The white part in the middle is all stucco.
I'm sorry, Bob, you broke up a little bit there. If you were asking about the material that's stucco, the white.
Okay.
The white is stucco.
Our concern is on the north elevation, especially in South Carolina, Columbia rather. It does not get any sun. It doesn't get as much sun. So when you use that stucco, to make sure it's mildew resistant or whatever, there won't be that much sun on it.
Okay. I apologize, Bob. I know it sounds like you were mentioning a concern about the sun, and I missed the last part. It just sort of broke up.
Mildew.
My audio.
Yeah. You got it, Tom?
Well, I think your question was about how to mitigate against the potential of mildew because it's such a damp climate and it's not getting any sun. Was that your concern? Your question?
Yeah. It doesn't get that much sun, and since that stucco has that wet looking, and it eventually get dirty and mildew.
I guess in response to that, I hadn't really thought that through specifically, but I think in terms of just the stucco and just going with that, I think it'll just be something that we'll try to address within the application. So if it's more of a hard trowel finish, we'll try to make it sort of control the porousness of the material and make it as resilient as the material allows us.
I can, if I may, this is Jim Banowitz. The technology today exists for, there are actually coatings, or I'm sorry, there are admixtures that go in. It's into the product that help to keep the surface clean. It actually helps to keep it clean and avoid what you're talking about, Bob. So the newer technology, stucco, if you will, really mitigates those concerns, because those are absolutely legitimate concerns that the manufacturers have through science and admixtures mitigated.
Well said. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have just sort of I do have a question about this white piece, both north and south, and I think the south elevation is more or less the same as this, if I'm not mistaken. And it also gets to the west elevation, which is that the earlier scheme, the March scheme, they were larger openings, they were asymmetrically, the mullion pattern was asymmetrical, but it seemed like there was a very deliberate composition there. I guess I'm wondering if you couldn't look at, you've got, I'm trying to understand the rhythm, and it's sort of a 2 1 1 1 4 1 1 1 2, and it almost looks, it doesn't seem like it's got enough kind of compositional hierarchy. Like it wouldn't, I don't think it would take much to make it a little bit more deliberate, so that it doesn't just look like a bunch of punches. If you follow what I'm getting at. It's not really talking about adding expense, just maybe grouping in a way that you've gone to a lot of effort, for instance, in the foreground elevations to create vertical and horizontal hierarchy, and then to have a different kind of expression at the corners. But that, and this is something that we talked about in the actual hearing, legs are so much shallower, that facade on the south and the north, we've never really I'm talking about the north, but that much more, that much more visible from the street, and at the same time, it's less interesting, for lack of a better word.
Well, the only thing I would say, Tom, is, and I'm going to kick this back to the architects, but some of this has got to be driven by where windows fall in the unit, right? You know what I mean? So we don't want to do what happens a lot of times in architecture where you sacrifice function for the exterior view.
Yeah, and I'm not
In
suggesting.
Chicago, we did a project in Chicago a couple of years ago where we alternated the window pattern on every floor, and it looked really cool, except that every other floor the windows didn't function so well.
No, I'm not suggesting moving the windows. I'm just suggesting make the pattern a little bit more deliberate. Way it's
If I-
organized, in terms of the exterior skin.
Bob, if
I
I
don't.
may,
I'm just saying it looks like it's
Yep.
compared to what you see in the foreground here, which is actually pretty nicely composed. It just looks like sort of there wasn't as much energy put in there, and it's now pretty prominent.
I mean, I think what we're trying to do, and it goes to Jay's point, is working with the layout of the units themselves, is to get the central unit where we can, is to group units, the bedroom units together. So that those 4 that you're seeing in the center read as a block, then the 3 get spaced out, and then you get another block. So that we're trying to do, that there are 4 tight, 3 loose, 4 tight, 3 loose. And I think that'll read more in the actual building. I think it's hard to portray here with the emphasis on the horizontals that we're seeing. I think the vertical rhythm will read as well in there as it does in the south elevation on Washington Street, where you do get the kind of pilaster quality to it. So in these, where I think the drawings may not serve us as well as they could, but you're seeing that grouping of 4, 3, 4, 3. So it's hard when you only see it just through this piece that you don't get the rest of it going as well. And then the corner elements open up, and there's a deliberate double window at the corners to kind of punctuate it.
I'm just suggesting that, for instance, you might make those small pilasters between them, or whatever you want to call them, between the windows where you have the grouping of 4, a slightly different color, or something to emphasize that you've got these groupings as opposed to the single individual ones. That's all I'm saying, because I don't think there's enough differentiation.
Sure.
I've not been suggesting moving the windows from the beginning of the comment. I'm just saying.
We definitely hear you. We can definitely look at
Sure.
it.
Sure.
Pardon me?
Yeah, that helps, Tom. Yeah, your clarification there. Yeah.
It's not a big change. And the only other question I have, and it's on the west elevation. I'm just wondering why you wouldn't treat the west elevation more similarly to how you treat the east elevation, which I think has been a pretty big improvement. You've got this block of, you got sort of 3 different things going on. You've got the southern half, and then you've got that reveal, then you've got another thing of these windows, and then you've got a corner that's similar to the corner on the east elevation. But I wonder why you wouldn't continue that, because I mean, to me, I think that the hierarchy of the verticals and then the background horizontals, works better than just the punches. And you've got 2 different things going on that elevation. I understand you got the parking deck below, but other than that, it seems like it'd be stronger if you didn't make that switch. And it's going to be really visible, even though it's not facing directly on the street.
Tom, part of that was when we were looking at the plan, it was tough to pull those windows to get the 6 equal in there. We ended up with this A kind of B's and then an A at the end in the northern half of the facade. So we couldn't get that pilaster reading the same way. So then it was to if we couldn't get it to read the same, we said, well, let's make it feel a little different. And your point about the base that figures into it a bit. But we could not get that feel of the pilasters running through cleanly and still have it meet the plan, in the way that we needed it to. And I think that was a struggle that we had. And we thought that this at least gave it kind of a sense of its own piece, as it comes around. So.
Well, I mean, you guys are the designers. It doesn't seem as strong as certainly doesn't seem as strong as the east facade, but I don't know what the layouts are, and it's not our job. So that would be my only other comment. I'll open it to other commissioners. I don't have any other comments other than that. I would encourage if you can continue looking at this elevation to, I mean, I think you understand what I mean. It's, these things don't really have anything to do with each other. Not as successful as the other side.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we've really looked at the massing, and we've tried to introduce sort of the overall symmetry, and then sort of grouped symmetry and family. So whether it's on the south side or the north side, as Drew was mentioning, we've been trying to introduce that at different scales, hoping that it resonates, through the overall composition. But I certainly understand your comment. And it's just that fine balance between program and form the riddle that we, as architects always contend with.
I'd like to hear from other DDRC members if anyone has anything to say.
I would certainly agree with Tom on this north facade, but overall, I think this design that you guys listen to, a number of the commissioners' concerns and address those in this round of the design, and I think it looks good, especially this front entryway where you extended the glazing another 2 or 3 panels. I can't recall the number that you said. Overall, I think that y'all heard a lot of concerns of the board, and happy to see them addressed here.
You flip through that. I would like to emphasize
I'm sorry.
the north and south white facades, if you could. And I think I explained my concern. I'm not thinking about anything really significant, but just pushing the differentiation a little bit through maybe a change of the vertical elements in the bunched windows or something, just to, I think, to clarify that composition a little further, I think would be helpful.
Hey, Tom, this is Jay. I want to try to, my goal here is to try to, get some, consensus, and I'm not sure I understand your comment. So could you help me understand exactly what
I'll say it again. It's that, and Drew explained it, which I could see. I mean, it's clear to me, but yeah, if you take that rectangle and take it across take it to the left window, capture the left window as well, both windows, either side, and pull that all the way down to the terrace. That, for instance, to me seems like a composition. And you've got a similar thing on the left, all the way to the left and all the way to the right, where you bunch the windows. I just think, maybe just a matter of changing the color of the verticals, or it's you guys, can work through that. But if you could make that more, that and the 2 at the other sides where you're bunching the windows, just somehow compositionally make those more distinct from the ones where you have the individual 3 punches. Because it all sort of reads like it's all just a little bit too similar, but not quite. It almost looks like an accident of window placement.
If I may, Tom, I'm going to ask if I could share my screen for a second.
Yes, please.
So let's see, bear with me. So Bob, you've got, yeah, unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, yep.
All right. Go. So, Tom, I think what you're saying is if we use an approach like this, now granted, I haven't gotten to that base level, the ground floor, but just quickly.
I can't see your screen, Drew.
Okay, let me try again. Sorry. There we go. Can you let me know when you can see it?
Something more similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, I just picked a gray time just to get something up there, and how we take it up the top or not. Do you know what I mean? Whether we do something up here.
I mean,
that would finish that out. I think, no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So.
And that I mean, I don't know. You guys, obviously, you're the designers. I mean, now you're sort of getting a little bit of foreground background. You may want
yeah, and you get the sense of the pilaster coming through even without changing the spandrel in the white bands in here. Just that alone starts to let that feel like it's a cousin to the Washington Street facade.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly where
I think that's something we can do. I mean, I think that color change is actually kind of about right, I think. You know what I mean? Like it's, what do you think, Drew? You view
Yeah.
that kind of in the light gray family or something like that?
Yeah, just so it's not mimicking too much what's going on here, but it's in the, it takes it out to let this be the field in the background. So I think that that's a neutral. And we've talked with, Jim's on the line, but we've talked with Clayco, and the color change isn't as big a deal. If it was a material change, that would be something else. So I think we're in there, it's in the right neighborhood and it feels fine. So I don't
Are you
see any
talking about,
issues.
Tom, are you talking about doing that on the back too? Is that your ambition as
I
well?
think, I think
Yeah,
so.
because we've got that same thing going on, Tom, right? And it would pick it up more.
Yeah.
So, and I think we just have to be judicious whether it feels with these guys, because what it highlights or doesn't, that we might have to adjust them a bit, but it's that same notion, sure.
I mean, do what you think looks right, but I'm just saying it. And I don't think the north is as bad as the south. The south was, I shouldn't use the word bad, but as fabulous, I guess.
Right.
I was gonna say, between you and Jay, we're getting pats on the back today.
You know what I mean?
Yes. No, I totally understood. So,
Yeah, I think on the back, Drew, flip around at the back real quick.
I think we could bundle, there's like maybe four columns.
yeah,
Right, I think there's a
we can
couple-
kind of
two
make it
groups
feel a
of two
little
in the
more
center, maybe.
symmetrical. Yeah,
Mhm.
the bane of it is right here, but we can work towards getting that to be a little tighter as we, take it through the rest of the design process. Basically go A, B, A,
Yeah.
and go
I mean,
like that.
I think your instinct to not have it compete with the rest is correct, but it just seems like it could be a little less monotonous.
Yeah.
All right, well, let us study that, because I don't think that, I actually think on the front part, it looks pretty good. Haven't quite seen how you would pick that rhythm up on the back, but maybe. But on the front,
Sorry.
I think it adds some dimension to the whole thing. So, certainly put that in there, and we'll study the back and maybe give you a couple choices. Maybe that's what we'll do on the back. I just want to get to the point where we can vote on it. You know what I mean? We won't have enough time to do this one more time. So we need to get a package that everybody's reasonably comfortable with. And if there's a couple alternatives, we could offer those up and discuss them. But I don't want to come back again. That'll be a problem.
Well, I think that, twice before we've done these work sessions and you've come back after the work session, you've gotten approval. So, I mean, unless other commissioners have something they're speaking up about, which I hope that's not the case. It seems like we're heading the same direction we've headed in the past. And
Okay, good.
anything else from anybody?
I'm good.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I think we saw some pretty good improvements from what we saw last.
Tom, if you don't mind.
I agree.
There's
Hey,
one thing I just wanted to bring up from some of the past, the recommendations, or we had some conditions, I guess, on the previous approval that had to do with just addressing the fact that even though the percentage of glazing has gone up on the ground floor on Assembly Street, I think we're still below 50%, and on Washington Street, we're maybe just about 50%. So the recommendation on the last approval was to do something on those panels on Washington Street, just to try to activate where we don't have glazing. So I don't know if the commission wants to discuss that, or, but I guess the plants had come back at some point to try to soften the facade, but that was the maintenance concern. So I don't know if the developer is amenable to looking into some murals or something like that, but I guess we're way below what the recommendation is on both street facing ground floors from a fenestration standpoint.
You're talking about those three metal panels on Washington, right?
Correct.
Let's go to that picture so we make sure we're all focused in on the same thing. Can Drew or
Bob,
somebody?
Bob, do you want to do it with the still, or you want me to do it through the model?
I'd say, Drew, if you want to bring it up in the model, it might
Sure.
be.
I think 3D is better because
Yeah, no
there
problem.
is some depth there in that facade along the ground floor. So I want to make
Yeah.
sure everybody can understand that.
Sure. Let's see if I can do it in one step this time. Get some
So-
sunshine turned on here.
Put the pointer on where they are. Is there 3 of them or 4 of them?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get this sun up a little brighter. It looks a little dark on the screen to me. Are we talking about in the southwest corner, right?
No, I don't think that's what she means. I think she means to the right of that.
Yeah, it's kind of those middle, just where the
These guys.
storefront ends and then you're just got blank wall panels.
Right.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
there's 4 of
There's
them.
actually space behind
Yeah,
there.
it's actually open. So those are seen as open, and that we were looking to landscape it so that you created this, you
Like
know,
a colonnade.
yeah, going through there, got the depth, you know, had a little more interest. You do see beyond it, but sorry. It's looking
I guess
very
it looks like a
dark and light.
solid panel.
Yeah, when you see it this way, you can see what's going on. So we're mimicking, you know, it's doing what the storefront's doing, just without the glazing.
And
And
what,
that's where we
behind it, Drew?
tried to grow it. Pardon me?
what's behind it though? Like when you
It's
stand up
open.
and look into it, what are you going to see?
You're seeing the roof of the utility spaces down below, or it's open to them, depending on what we've got there. But that's why we're saying that we'd plant it along here so that you'd have the right height. Let me get it. Sorry. You
Well,
know,
what's-
so you don't actually see over it.
Well,
and
yeah, but you're going to see through it at some point. Like
You'll see
what,
through it, but
behind it?
seeing down into it, we're trying to keep with the planting and the sill, that it's high enough that it keeps you from seeing down, that you see across, yes, into the wall of the garage and the openings that we've got and the screening that we've got for the garage.
well, right, but just so everybody kind of understands, there's a function going on too, right? Because there's
Yeah,
louvers.
that's what I'm saying. There's this, well, these screening here is for the planting to grow up. Down below it is, back in this area, is the utility spaces that we've got for the building, whether it's a fire pump room, transformer, switchgear down below.
Right. So the idea, Lucinda, is that it's a see-through panel, if you will. So like, if you were going to put a mural
Yeah.
on it, it would be behind it. It wouldn't
Yeah.
do what you do. Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Lucinda, it would be
understand.
this
I know,
back
I
wall
understand
here.
the function of
Yeah.
the space. I guess it's really just a matter of trying to mitigate the fall short of what the guidelines recommend, which is, I mean, it's open, but it's not activated. It's all about, you know, an active storefront or activity inside of a building, you know, I mean, the utility space, a parking garage, all that, we just try to keep to a minimum along a street frontage. And it's just, the concern is that we've got both Assembly Street and Washington Street with, you know, half or less than half being, you know, actual fenestration. Anyway, it was in the conditions for approval and it didn't ever feel like it was addressed. And I'm not sure if there's just an obvious, easy answer. Maybe it's not a mural, but that's just kind of an important thing for us not to set precedents that 45% is okay when it recommends 70%. So
Well, just let me, I just want to make sure before we address the aesthetic that functionally, don't we functionally have to leave that open? Isn't that part of the whole function of that space? Like if we walled that up in some fashion, would that impact the functionality of that venting or whatever?
We could get it through the roof, Jay, but we just thought it was, you know, a way of achieving both goals. And that, granted, Lucinda, the vegetation isn't the same kind of activation, but we thought it would get us in that neighborhood of it not just being a solid wall, and that there's something happening. And with your climate that we, you know, with the right selection, that we could make that happen, and even making it climb and trying to get some verticality out of it was to help activate it. Whether there's some art or not beyond here could be another way of then getting you that second level of kind of surprise and interest.
I don't have any issue, just with for the record, of putting art behind it. Like, I don't have a problem with that. If you know, we're going to have a lot of art on this building. On the north facade, we're going to have a lot, right? But I just think that I don't want to wall off the front of that, because I'm afraid if I do that, I'm going to have functionality issues with the machine.
I don't understand that.
Well,
'cause where's your actual open area? I assume you're talking about open area for the garage, right?
Well, there's machines below that. Like, why don't you show the plan view?
Well, I don't understand how those openings are participating in your free area that you need.
They're not,
Because
these
I
aren't
think-
participating in the free area of the garage. It was
Oh.
just what Jay was talking about was, did we need them for the space below? They're not. But we thought, since that space wasn't coming up, that if we continued the facade across and carry that height, so you do have a nice street wall going there, and carry the colonnade aspect that Andrew was talking about, that we're activating it in that way that as an architectural or architectonic feel, it's there. And then with the space, and that's where Jay's point was, then if we did put art on this back wall, I can't do it quickly, but you know, if that
Right.
became
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't think that's what
activated, then you're seeing that through the, sorry, bear with me one
Sort of
second.
through the arcade almost.
Through the arcade,
right.
yeah.
I understand.
Little
Because it's
jumpy
really-
this morning. You know, then you'd get that enfilade of windows going all the way down. And yes, some are truly open, but the other, you know, but it is of that spirit. And it felt better than trying to change to something else completely here.
Well, so you're looking back at, if you look through that, you're not looking at louvers, you're just looking at stucco panels, right?
Well, we're saying if we
Right.
put artwork or we did something so that what you look through, sorry, it is a little, it's a little jumpy being back and
It's a little
forth
too much
between the
depth.
zone.
But you're pretty
Yeah,
quickly
so
getting to the sill of that thing, of those openings is pretty close to eye level. I mean, I don't know why somebody would get on their tiptoes and look through to that back wall to look at art. I agree with Lucinda's concern.
Yeah, I just think, you know, this space is, you know, there's a couple things going on here. You've got slope happening, which is happening, you know, in the garage too. So, you know, the ceiling height, you know, is changing and, you know, I think, I just don't know if we can put panels in there or not. Like, isn't there some kind of venting going on that in the roof of that garage below
Right.
it?
But it still, it
Yeah.
does have access. I mean, the sidewalls aren't gonna unfortunately change that, Jay. I know where you're going, but it's, these being solid or closed wouldn't change that venting through the roof necessarily.
That seems obvious, to be honest.
I guess what I thought before from one of the renderings was that, and I just misread it, that there were actually recessed panels in that wall where the glass ends, but they were just solid. And it seemed
No.
like a simple thing to put something graphic on there just to make it more interesting. I mean, if that can be done, that feels like what we're maybe suggesting, especially if it has no impact on the ventilation.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you there. Like, if that's the case, I'm not objecting to doing that. I just want to make sure that I'm not goofing up the function somehow. That's all. So why don't you let us look at,
Yeah, Jay, I'll jump in here. There's no function concerns there. If we were to put panels in front of those openings, that would not impact the function mechanically behind there.
I'm
Well-
glad you brought that up, Lucinda, now rather than later, because I think I agree with your concern about that.
yeah, I think that's fine. We can do that. I mean, what will we, Jim, what will we put in there? What would be the material?
Well, if Lucinda wants it to be, or if, you know, if the board wants it to be a mural or something, I mean, whatever is the substrate would be, you know, for that to be applied to, but
Well, that's kind of my question to you. What is it going to be?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to jump in for just a second because I know in some of our earlier conversations with the utility company, with the electric company, that just for, you know, for maintenance routine access, we had previously had metal panels there, and we were talking about maybe art, you know, patterns, you know, sort of water jet cut into it and things like that. But to allow it to be accessible, the power company wanted those panels to be demountable. So in a sense, they were on hinges or they were panels so they could be lifted and taken out of place in case of emergency or just to swap out equipment.
Yeah, we don't have a roof now over the transformer, so we could do either or.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to make or break that
Yeah.
to make them operable in some way or manageable. So, granted, I haven't
Well-
put artwork on these, but it was just to give you the sense of the difference in the field.
Well, here's going to be my recommendation then. I remember that discussion, Bob, and I just don't remember where it all ended up. But if we can do this and we don't impact the mechanical functioning in some fashion, you know, and I'm not prepared to tell you
Yeah.
the details, but I do remember that conversation. If we can do it without that, we'll put them in there and we'll, you know, we'll give the opportunity for, I haven't figured out yet, like what exactly the process will be for the artwork on the library passageway. You know, it'll be some kind of a process with some local artists. You know, I'm not going to suggest necessarily a competition. Sometimes that's weird, but we'll select among what we've done in the past is we have people submit and then we kind of select somebody we think fits the right mold. And maybe we'll pick somebody different for the front. But I don't have a problem with putting them in there. I just don't want to commit to a functional problem. I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, that just has to be accounted for. So I want to make sure, and when we come back to you, we'll have an explanation one way or the other. But I just want to make sure we're not going to do something that's going to cause us a problem.
Yeah, and I was bringing it up I'm not trying to throw tacks in the road. I love the idea of having art, you know, art there, panels. I just know sometimes with utility companies, they just have regulations and they can be fairly unyielding. So that's the only reason I bring it up. Just
Yeah, we'll be okay.
Get a little more input from them.
We'll be okay.
And Lucinda, I think if it, you know, to keep it moving and not have to come back, you know, to Jay's point earlier, I remember in some of your notes, you said, you know, this could be an area that we continue to work with you as we take it through the design process.
Right.
So I think we're all aware of it. You know, everybody's, you know, committed to making this be what it needs to be on Washington. So, you know, if there's a way of doing that and keeping it going forward.
Yeah, but again, Drew, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, we need to get this figured out by whenever we submit. When do we have to submit? What is the rule for when we formally submit for this next hearing?
Actually, let me get my calendar up because, just give me a second.
Showing December 2nd,
That's the deadline for the January meeting. Sorry, I didn't have that in front of
January
me.
14th. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
December 2nd, Andy?
Yes, sir.
Well, and actually, so we can wiggle with that a little bit. There's a little bit of flexibility there with the deadlines. I mean, there was no way to get y'all into the December hearing, but if we're, you know, looking at January, we can certainly give you a little more time for drawing. So let me look at my calendar next week. I'm actually not in the office this week, and I will coordinate with you guys on a drop dead deadline for the January hearing.
Okay. But it's going to be quick, right? It's going to be, if it's not the 2nd, it's going to be the following week.
I mean, I don't know, I guess. Let's see.
I mean, it's okay. It is what it is. I'm just trying to frame this for everybody, right?
Well, and Jay, that's why I was trying to give a way of, this is something that, as long as they're seeing it develop further, that we're able to take it with some, not minimal, but with some work today that everybody feels like, yes, it's the right direction. It may not be done, but that we can continue forward and vote on it, or they can vote on it.
Yeah, but we can't do that, Drew. This is a formal approval that these guys give, and if they view this as outside of administrative review, then we can't do that. So we need to get this approved. I don't want to, let's don't get lost internally here.
Well, it could be, I mean, it could potentially, we might be able to work with you on something in the middle of December for getting the drawings turned in. But I mean, just to be clear, today is not a formal approval. Right? Today is just guidance so that when y'all come back in January, you can get the approval at the public hearing.
Right, but where I'm going is, so
Yeah,
Mike
understood.
understands, this is not something that going to be an evolutionary thing over the course of the building. This is going to be like approved on or January 14th or whatever it is, and it needs to be submitted on December 12th or whatever it is. So we need to get ourselves to understand that by December 12th or whatever that
Right.
cutoff.
Correct.
That's any other commentary that we should take into account?
I have a minor question, actually, and you can take it or leave it, but I'm just, as we sit and look at this image, without moving, yeah, let's go back like to where you were. So I just wonder, on the right side and the left side of the, how do I describe this? The top, as the tower comes down and you've got the bands coming down, on the right side, you've got the 4 bands, they come down, and yeah, and then you've got a little bit of space. On the left side, you've got that extra little piece of the lighter stucco, and I'm wondering how you wouldn't do the same thing on the left side.
We would, it's just an oversight, Tom, in the modeling.
All right. It's just,
Okay. We were quickly banging this out, so it would be the same on the right, and on the left would carry it over as well.
yeah, great. Those go on the right thing, in my opinion. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, I mean, I think this has been productive. I think we've got pretty good marching orders. Anything else that you guys want us to take into account?
Think not.
Okay,
Appreciate your time very much. We're looking-
likewise, thank you.
Right. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you.
You too.
You too.
Thank you.